Uh, Assalamu alaikum and good morning to all of you. The topic of today's class is cesarean section. Uh, First, introduction. Cesarean section is a part of modern obstetric practice in order to reduce the maternal and fetal morbidity and mortality.
मैम पीछे से
And
थोड़ी सी
it is
डिस्टरबेंस है।
actually simultaneously class एक और हो रही है.
ठीक
आवाज
है।
क्लियर नहीं आ रही?
नहीं मैडम, आवाज़ क्लियर नहीं आ रही है, पीछे से जो है थोड़ा सा शोर भी आ रहा है।
अच्छा जस्ट मैं फिर अनम्यूट कर, आप मुझे अनम्यूट करें, गिव मी फ्यू सेकंड्स तो मैं इसको वो करूँ, सॉर्ट आउट
ठीक।
करूँ. इनकी आवाज़ डिस्टर्बिंग हो रही है.
मैम आप खुद को म्यूट करें, क्योंकि फिर मैं अगर यहाँ से म्यूट करूँगा तो फिर
ओके.
आपकी आवाज़ नहीं आएगी मुझे। आप खुद म्यूट करें।
चलिए इट्स सॉर्टेड आउट. ओके. Cesarean section is a part of modern obstetric practice and it reduces the fetal and maternal morbidity and mortality. It is a surgical procedure in which incisions are made through the abdominal wall and the uterus to deliver the baby. There is a wide geographical variation in the cesarean section rate, like the incidence of cesarean section is 0.4% in Chad and it is up to 49-50% in Brazil, while in UK the incidence of cesarean section is 25 to 30%, and the incidence is increasing in developed country, and the reasons mainly is maternal request. Okay. What is the right cesarean section rate? What should be the right cesarean section rate? It is not known. But in 1985, WHO recommends that cesarean section rate should not be more than 15%. And this figure is based on mortality data, which was collected from the countries in which the mortalities of maternal mortality was high, and it has been seen that cesarean section rate uh, in those countries was less than 10%. So the recommended WHO cesarean section rate is that it should not be more than 15%. Now, there is a classification system for emergency cesarean section. It has been divided into 4 categories: 1, 2, 3, and 4. Category 1 is a category in which there is an immediate threat to the life of mother and a fetus, while category 2 is that there is no immediate threat to the life of a woman or a fetus. Category 3 is the category which requires early delivery, but there is no compromise on fetal or maternal side. And the category 4 the cesarean section, which is done at a time that suits to the women and maternity services. So this is very important classification system, and it should be remembered. And I will discuss further what are the different indications for cesarean section under these categories. So now the category 1. Category 1 means that there is an immediate threat to the life of a woman and a fetus. What are the indications for these? There is an abruptio placenta. What is abruptio placenta? Abruptio placenta is the placenta which is a bleeding from a placenta which is normally situated. When placenta separates, there is a bleeding between the uterus and the placenta, and there is fetal compromise. And if the amount of bleeding is large, it may also compromise the life of the mother. So there is an immediate threat to the life of a fetus and the mother. So it is an category 1, in which immediate cesarean section is required, and the time interval between decision to the delivery should not be more than 30 minutes. Another example of category 1 is a cord prolapse. Cord prolapse again is a um, indication in which there is an immediate threat. Whenever we do, when the presenting part is high, like encephalic presentation, when head is high, and if we do artificial rupture of membrane, the cord may prolapse through the cervix, undilated or fully dilated cervix, and there is an immediate threat to the life of the fetus. So immediate cesarean section is recommended. When there is a rupture of the scar, it is a scar of a previous cesarean section, in which there is immediate threat to the life of a woman and a fetus, because it rupture of the scar or the uterus will lead to bleeding, separation of the placenta. Baby may come out of the uterus, and it may come into the peritoneal cavity. It is most of the time it is associated with the death of the fetus, and uh, heavy bleeding will also endangers the life of the mother. Scalp pH of the fetus when it is less than 7.2. It indicates that when there is a fetal distress. And 7.2, the normal pH is between 7.35 to 4.5. 7.2 shows the acidosis. And if we have done a scalp pH of the baby in order to confirm the fetal distress, and if it turned out to be less than 7.2, this is the definitive evidence of the fetal distress, that baby needs to be delivered immediately because there is an immediate threat to the life of the fetus. And whenever there is a prolonged fetal bradycardia. What is fetal bradycardia? When the fetal heart rate, there is, what is the normal range? The normal range is between 110 to 160 beats per minute. And we call it bradycardia when fetal heart rate is less than 110. And if there is a prolonged period of fetal bradycardia. So this is also showing fetal distress and threat to the life of the fetus. So immediate delivery should be done in these cases. So category 1, remember carefully, any threat to the life of the women or the fetus. Abruption placenta presents with antepartum hemorrhage, cord prolapse, rupture of the uterus when there is a scalp pH of less than 7.2, prolonged fetal bradycardia, and that's it. This is category 1. Okay, now category 2 is that there is no immediate threat to the life of the women or the fetus, but delivery should be expedited in a timely manner. What are the examples for this? Why delivery should be expedited? What are the examples? When there is deterioration in the CTG with pH is borderline, scalp pH is borderline, and this happens mainly in early active phase of the labor. Active phase of the labor is what? When the cervical dilatation is more than 3 centimeter, and cervix is dilating at the rate of 1 centimeter per hour. So it is an active phase of the labor, and if there is any abnormality found on the CTG with borderline scalp pH, so there is no immediate threat as the pH is borderline. It is not less than 7.2, but there are changes in the CTG, fetal heart rate. So it should be, delivery should be expedited, and the delivery and the decision to the delivery time should not be more than 70 to 80 minutes. Delivery should be expedited, although there is no immediate threat, but early delivery should be done. And slow progress of the labor, and or non-progress of the labor. And how we define non-progress of the labor? When the normal cervical dilatation rate is 1 to 1.5 centimeter per hour. If the vaginal findings remain same over a period of 4 hours, that indicates that the progress of the labor is slow, or a patient is going into the non-progressive labor. Or if the dilatation is occurring less than 2 centimeter in 4 hours. So this is slow progressive labor, and if we have corrected her if patient was not having pain, the reason for having slow progress was inadequate uterine contraction, and if we have augmented her properly, and despite of the adequate contraction, there is no change in the cervical dilatation, and the progress of the labor is slow. This is again, this is not an immediate threat, but delivery should be expedited, and cesarean section will be done in this case because the dilatation or the progress of the labor is very slow. And if there is a poor maternal pain control, this is again um, comes in the category 2. It's not an immediate, but it should be expedited in a timely manner. Category 3 is that requires early delivery, but there is no current maternal or fetal compromise. There are a wide range of indications, like if we have planned a cesarean section, and we have planned a cesarean section for a patient, but patient comes in emergency with complaint of ruptured membrane, and this comes under category 3. There is no immediate threat, there is no maternal or fetal compromise, but as the cesarean section was planned due to some other reasons, we are not going to why cesarean it was a planned cesarean section. It may be because of previous 2 or previous 3, but she came in emergency with ruptured membranes, so it comes under the category 3. Whenever there is a growth restricted fetus, baby is growth restricted, and baby is in a preterm period, like before 37 weeks completed weeks, and growth restricted, how we confirm that baby is growth restricted? There is an abnormal venous Doppler of the baby, but the fetal heart rates are normal. Growth restricted baby with abnormal Doppler studies, but fetal heart rates are normal. There is no current acute fetal compromise, but it requires an early delivery. This is category 3 cesarean section. And category 4 is a cesarean section, in which time which suits to the woman and the maternity services. And category 4, this has replaced the ideally be delayed up to 39 weeks. Why 39 weeks? Because we want to minimize the respiratory problems in the baby. So, cesarean section, which is done before the onset of the labor, is associated with respiratory mobility in the neonate, and the risk decreases after 39 weeks. For this reason, planned cesarean section should be performed after 39 weeks, unless there is a maternal or fetal reasons for earlier delivery. So it comes under the heading of category 4, like elective cesarean section or planned cesarean section, and it should be done after or up till 39 weeks in order to minimize the complications, neonatal respiratory complications. Okay, now there are multiple indications for cesarean section. The main indication is previous 1 cesarean section, and repeat cesarean section, in which before planning for the cesarean section in a patient with previous 1, we should counsel about her vaginal birth after cesarean section. We should tell her about pros and cons of this VBAC and the cesarean section. And our counseling should include that vaginal birth after cesarean section, the success rate is about 75%, and it is more than 90% in those cases who have had previously a vaginal birth also. Like if there is a multigravida who has previously normal deliveries, but her last delivery was cesarean section, so the chances of having a normal delivery has increased up to 90%. While if the patient is only having previous 1 and no previous vaginal deliveries, then the chances of having a vaginal birth after cesarean section is 75%, which is a good percentage, and we should consider for vaginal birth after cesarean section if there are no contraindications for vaginal delivery. But there is a risk of the rupture of the scar, which is low, and it is about 1 in 200. And the VBAC, it also reduces the risk of respiratory problems in the baby, but it carries additional 1% risk of infection and need of blood transfusion as compared if we go for an elective cesarean section. So vaginal birth after cesarean section has an additional 1% risk of infection and blood transfusion. So this was all about previous cesarean section. previous one is an indication, but we should see whether our patient is a candidate for a normal delivery, so we can offer her a vaginal birth, but and after proper counseling. Another indication is malpresentation, and the common malpresentation is a breech presentation. And following the publication of the term breech trial, women should be counseled that vaginal breech delivery is associated with increased risk of perinatal morbidity and morbidity as compared to elective cesarean section. So women should therefore be offered elective cesarean section if external cephalic version is contraindicated or has failed. So another important indication or a common indication is malpresentation, and in malpresentation, breech. And according to guidelines, breech vaginal delivery is associated with increased perinatal mortality and morbidity. So those patients should be offered elective cesarean section if external cephalic version has failed or is contraindicated. Fetal distress is the most common indication. And how we diagnose fetal compromise, there are certain ways to diagnose fetal compromise. Like there is on auscultation, there is deterioration in the fetal heart rate. There may be a tachycardia or a bradycardia. On vaginal examination, there will be a meconium staining of a liquor. We will see on examination that meconium is that liquor is stained with the meconium, and the category of meconium depend how much meconium is mixed with the liquor. And another thing by which we can say we can suspect fetal compromise is suspicious or pathological CTG trace, and we confirm it by fetal scalp pH. And if it is less than 7.2, then it is a confirmed fetal compromise. While we suspect with abnormal fetal heart rates, meconium stain liquor, and abnormal CTG. And fetal compromise or fetal distress is the most common indication for a cesarean section. Is multiple like if it is a twin pregnancy and the leading twin is not cephalic, or there are high order multiples. In this case, cesarean section is indicated. Another most important indication is the placenta previa. Placenta previa is placenta which is attached to the lower uterine segment, while the normal location of the placenta is the upper uterine segment or the fundus. When it occupies in the lower uterine segment, and there are 4 grades of placenta previa. If there is a major placenta previa, which is 3 and 4, in which in placenta previa type 3, the placenta is partially covering the os, and in 4, it is completely covering the os. In both of these cases, normal vaginal delivery is not possible, and there is a chance of a massive hemorrhage and massive transfusion. So placenta previa major degree is an indication for cesarean section. While placenta previa type 1, in which placenta is lying in the reaching into the low uterine segment but not reaching up to the edge of the edge of the cervical os, and it is anterior. So in those cases, type 2 anterior. Type 2 anterior, we can offer her a vaginal delivery provided maternal and fetal conditions are satisfactory, but major degree of placenta previa and any degree of placenta previa with hemorrhage is an indication for placenta previa. And it should be conducted by some senior person, and it should be done in a unit in which there is a facility for a blood arrangement is available, and blood arrangement and transfusion. And appropriate counseling should be done with the patient regarding the massive hemorrhage, massive transfusion, and the need for hysterectomy. And placenta previa become more dangerous for a patient if she has a previous scar. Like placenta, if patient is having previous scar and also having placenta previa, then there are chances of having morbidly adherent placenta or placenta accreta. And in that case, we need to be more conscious, and it should be done in a senior. It should be done by senior obstetric consultant. And blood transfusion, blood products should be available. Multidisciplinary involvement in a pre-operative planning, and we should discuss with the patient like about hysterectomy and the need of the ICU care and post-operative problems. Another indication is abruption placenta, antepartum hemorrhage. Again, antepartum hemorrhage Or as we discussed in category 1, there is an immediate threat to the life of the mother or the fetus. Placenta previa and abruptio placenta comes under the heading of antepartum hemorrhage, in which there is an immediate threat to the life of the mother and the fetus. Okay, now another indication is a fetal disease. Now, what fetal disease can is important, like if baby is having hemorrhagic disease of newborn and we have given her in vitro transfusions, if baby is having diaphragmatic hernia or anterior abdominal wall defects, uh, any fetal disease which is associated with the fetal compromise during labor. So the a trial of a normal labor should be avoided, and that fetus should be delivered by cesarean section. And any maternal disease like which is associated with fetal maternal compromise, and patient is unable to bear the stress of the labor. So any medical, like if she is having any heart problem, mitral stenosis or cardiomyopathy or severe anemia with heart failure, so in those cases a cesarean section is recommended. Another important indication and a common indication nowadays is a maternal request. On maternal request, most of the cesarean sections are done nowadays. But what is before doing a section for section on her request, we should explore the reason. The most common reason for having a cesarean section on maternal request is excessive fear of the childbirth, which is also known as tocophobia, and patient gives the reason that they want it for the safety of the baby. So, if in case of tocophobia, patient should be referred to appropriate perinatal mental health professional, and and if after proper counseling and exploring the reasons, and if patient is not want to have a child of a normal labor, so elective cesarean section can be done. But nowadays, this has become the common indication or more frequent indication for having a cesarean section. Other indication for a cesarean section is HIV. When there is a viral load of 400 copies per ml, or when there is primary genital herpes infection in the third trimester. Primary, it's not the recurrent. In primary, in the third trimester, in order to avoid the vertical transmission to the baby, elective cesarean sections should be done in these cases. Okay, now the procedure. Before the procedure or cesarean section, informed consent is the most important thing, and it requires that we should counsel our patient about the risk and benefits, and and we should take consent on the consent form. And apart from consent, uh, certain blood tests are required, like we should do her blood group and cross match, and her hemoglobin. This will tell us whether our blood patient is anemic or not, or is there any need of arrangement of the blood or transfusion of the blood during surgery or before surgery. So this is the part of the fitness of the patient, and it should be done. This is the part of basic health profile: hemoglobin, blood grouping, and cross match. And the mode of anesthesia, which mode of anesthesia is employed, is the anesthetist decision, but good communication between the team is essential. Mostly the cesarean section is done under regional anesthesia, spinal anesthesia. General anesthesia is given when regional anesthesia has failed or is contraindicated. And patient should be bladder should be emptied prior to the start of the surgery. And if regional anesthesia is employed, catheter should be placed. It helps in the post operative urinary retention. So catheter should be passed before the surgery, and it should be left in place for at least 12 to 14, 24 hours after surgery. And prophylactic antibiotics should be given intravenously prior to giving skin incision, and it reduces the risk of post-operative infection, particularly endometritis and wound infection and urinary tract infection. Another very important thing is that before with any surgical procedure, WHO safety checklist should be used in order to confirm that for certain things which are necessary are done, and we should tick it on the paper, and it should be done. This is very important for the safety of the patient. So prior to the cesarean section, what is the preparation? That one first and most important thing is to take an informed consent. Informed consent means that we have counseled our patient regarding risk, benefits, and the complication, and they are aware of it before the start of the surgery, and they have given it. They have willingly given the consent for the operation. Another thing is that choice of the anesthesia, which is on the discretion of the anesthetist, and mostly it is done under the spinal anesthesia. And general anesthesia is given when it is contraindicated or it has failed. And blood tests are also important, in which most important is blood hemoglobin, and which tell us about the need of the transfusion during or before surgery. Bladder must be emptied before the surgery, and the catheter should be passed. And for regional anesthesia, it is very important to left it for 12 to 24 hours in order to avoid post-operative urinary retention. Post-operatively, prophylactic antibiotics should be given prior to making surgical incision, like before giving to the skin incision. 30 minutes before that, we should give antibiotic. And prophylactic means that we give only the single dose of antibiotic. But if our patient has risk factors, like if the duration of surgery is more than 30 minutes, or if patient is obese, if patient is diabetic, if patient comes to you with rupture of membrane, or if there is an element of infection, in that case, antibiotic can be continued up to 48 hours. But prophylactic antibiotic needs only single dose before giving the skin incision. Okay, now after preparation and pre-op things, the cesarean section, in which what is the procedure, what are the different steps which we take. The first thing is that we make an abdominal incision. The most there are three different skin incisions, and the most common is that is phalansteal incision. It is a low transverse curved suprapubic incision, and it uses a sharp dissection to open the rectus sheath and rectus muscle. After opening the rectus sheath, rectus muscle is separated from the sheath, and peritoneum is then picked up and opened with a sharp dissection. And it is given two finger above the pubic symphysis. It's a low transverse and curved suprapubic incision. And the difference between this and Joel Cohen incision is that in which we do a sharp dissection to separate the rectus, while Joel Cohen incision is slightly higher up, a straight transfer incision, but it employs a blunt dissection to open the rectus sheath and the peritoneum, in which we give initially a first small transverse incision, which has which is extended laterally with bluntly with the fingers. We do not use scissor to extend the scissors to extend the incision. This approach is associated with short operating time, lower blood loss, less fever, and less pain as compared to the phalansteal incision. So you should remember these are the two main incisions which are given. Like one is phalansteal and one is the Joel Cohen incision. Phalansteal incision is a sharp, is a semilunar, while Joel Cohen is a transverse, a slightly straight and slightly higher up incision. And Joel Cohen's we dissect rectus sheath bluntly after giving a central small incision. It is associated, as we are separating it bluntly with our fingers, so it is associated with less blood, with less timing, and less post-operative morbidity like fever. While in phalansteal incision, we excise rectus sheath with the scissor, and we separate the peritoneum from the rectus muscle, and we separate open the peritoneal cavity by sharp dissection. Another incision is vertical incision. Vertical incision is usually midline subumbilical incisions, and the advantage of this incision is that it allows the access to the abdomen as well as pelvis, like in which The pelvic access is also good as compared to the phalansteal incision. In phalansteal incision, the access is only restricted to the lower uterine segment, while in vertical skin, we can also approach to the upper uterine segment, and there are certain indications for doing this incision, for making this incision, like if there is a morbidly adherent placenta or placenta egrita, if the patient is extremely obese, or if there is a suspicion of other abdominal pathology, and if there are large fibroids into the lower uterine segment. So we give vertical midline incision because large fibroids in the lower segment or cervix will not allow us to give incision to the lower uterine segment. In that case, we need to give incision into upper segment, and if we give phalansteal incision, it is not possible to access to the upper segment. So vertical skin incision is also given, and but this is associated with increased incidence of the wound dehiscence, and cosmetically there are concerns regarding the cosmetic appearance as compared to the transverse incision. Okay, after opening the skin, subcutaneous fat, rectus sheaths, we retract the rectus muscle, we open the peritoneum. Now we have reached into the peritoneal cavity. In peritoneal cavity, first we see is the anterior wall of the uterus, and now the next step is to pick up the peritoneum in the vesico-uterine pouch. The reflection of the peritoneum in the vesico-uterine pouch is indicating the upper margin of the lower segment, and this is the side where we need to give the incision. And this is the lower segment is less vascular and thin, so incision to the lower uterine segment is associated with less bleeding and fewer post-operative complications like paralytic ileus, peritonitis, obstruction, and adhesions. And in which, after giving the incision, we see the bag of the amniotic membrane is bulging through the incision, and we give a small lick over that amniotic bag. Amniotic fluid will come out. We insert our hand below the fetal head and will lift it. We'll try to flex, rotate, and lift it out. But in cases if patient is in labor and head is deeply impacted, in that case we need to disimpact the fetal head, and it can be done by the surgeon from abdomen, or we need an assistance from vaginally, in which we ask our assistant or colleague to push the fetal head upward after flexing it, so that it will come slightly up and will deliver easily. If it is not possible to disimpact the fetal head, the other way to deliver the baby is by delivering a breech extraction, in which we will insert our hand into the uterus and try to grasp the fetal foot, and will pull out and deliver the baby. First legs will be delivered, then trunk, and then shoulders, and then lastly the head of the baby will be delivered. Obviously this is a difficult thing, and it might need a senior help as well. But it usually occur, a deeply impacted head occurs in all cases of the obstructed labor. So usually it comes out easily with the hand, but if deeply impacted, either we need an assistance or we have to deliver it by breech extraction. And in certain cases, if head is high and it is not possible to deliver it with a simple one hand, or so we can use lift out forceps or release forceps, or we can also use the vacuum cup to deliver the high fetal head. Like suppose if patient is not in labor and a head is not engaged and it is free and the amount of glycol is more, so it is difficult to deliver fetal head without assistance of the instrument. So we can use lift out forceps or vacuum. So there are three things. The delivery of the head is either by simply putting our hand into the lower uterine segment and we will flex and lift the head, it will come out easily. But if it is deeply impacted, we need disimpaction from vaginally, or either we need to deliver baby by breech extraction. and if head is free floating and it's not easily delivering by single hand, so we can use as assistance. We can deliver the head with the assistance of the lift out forceps, release forceps, or vacuum. Another category of a cesarean section is a classical cesarean section. The difference in the classical or the lower segment cesarean section is that in lower segment we give incision to the lower segment and it is a transverse incision. And as I said, it is an easy to repair, it is thin, less vascular, less blood loss, and there are low risk of complications in the subsequent pregnancy. While in classical cesarean section, we give vertical incision into the upper uterine segment. And the upper segment of the uterus is thick. It is associated with more hemorrhage, but but in which the delivery of the baby is easy, in which we deliver baby easily. What are the certain indication? We are not doing classical cesarean section in every case. The indication for cesarean section, classical cesarean section, is when the lower segment is obscured by the fibroids or there are cervical fibroids, or if there are dense adhesions in the lower segment and it is not possible to access the lower segment because the reason for having the dense adhesions could be multiple previous surgeries. If there is a major degree of placenta previa or there is a comorbidly adherent placenta, in which we want to avoid cutting of the placenta, because cutting of the placenta or going through the placenta is associated with hemorrhage, and which we want to avoid. We want to avoid hemorrhage, so major placenta previa or placenta eclita, or when there is transverse lie with back in front. In this case, it is also not it is not easy to deliver the baby by phalansteal incision because baby is lying in the transverse plane and with back in front. Supposingly, if the fetal limbs are in front, then it is very easy to grasp the fetal foot and to extract the baby. But if back is lying interiorly, so it is difficult to deliver that baby through the phalansteal incision, and we will make incision in the upper segment in those cases. And if there are fetal anomalies like conjoined twins. Conjoined twins is the abnormality in which the twins are joined and they are sharing the common even the part of the body or the major organs. And in that case, it is not possible to deliver baby by phalansteal incision. We need wide access to deliver the baby, so we make an incision into the upper uterine segment. Vertical incision or classical cesarean section is done. And another indication for having a classical cesarean section is cervical cancer, because cervix is diseased and the it is not possible to give incision into the lower segment, and the post-operative complications are more with this. So classical cesarean section is preferred in this case. So remember, these are the few indications for having a classical cesarean section. So after delivery of the head, after then the shoulders will be delivered by lateral traction and the rest of the baby is delivered by uh, normal extraction. Okay, and after delivering the baby, the placenta is delivered, and it is delivered by controlled contraction. In 5 units, intercinon should be given by slow IV injection to facilitate the contraction of the uterus and placental separation. Intercinon use of oxytocic drugs is associated with reduced blood loss. And after delivering the placenta, the cavity should be checked to ensure that it is empty. There is no part of the placenta or membrane is left behind. And now the closure. Once the baby or placenta is delivered and there is no problem, then we closes the uterus abdominal wall. First we close the uterus. For closing the uterus, there are two ways: whether we close the uterus, repair the uterus while it is inside the peritoneal cavity, or we exteriorize it. Exteriorization of the uterus is not recommended as it is associated with increased pain and there is no decrease in the hemorrhage or infection. But exteriorization allows the better visualization. And if there is an extension or extension of the angles, or if there is extension of the incision line below into the lower uterine segment, it will give us a better visualization, a better view, so that we can
Hello, Dr. Sophia. Hello. Hello, Dr. Sophia. Hello. Hello. जी
अब मेरी आवाज आ रही है? हेलो, क्या हो रही है
अस्सलाम
आवाज?
वालेकुम मैडम।
आवाज आ रही है आपको?
जी बिल्कुल मैडम।
हेलो,
जी मैडम, आवाज़ आ रही है।
ओके
इंटरनेट प्रॉब्लम था।
ओके, बीच में शायद कनेक्शन में थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम था, इसलिए ये बीच में से हो गया।
ठीक है मैडम। स्क्रीन नहीं आ रही आपकी मैडम।
स्क्रीन शेयर हो रही?
नहीं हुई भी मैडम अभी।
स्क्रीन नहीं आ रही।
जी
जी
आ गई है मैडम। जी बिल्कुल आ रही है।
ओके ओके, थैंक यू। आप कंटिन्यू करें।
जी मैडम ठीक है।
Okay. After delivering of the baby and the placenta, now comes the closure. Before closure, I was discussing with you the whether it should be repaired inside the peritoneal cavity or exteriorization should be done. The drawback of exteriorization is that it is associated with increased pain and there is no decrease in the hemorrhage or infection, but it allows the better visualization. So if there is extension of the tear or extension of the angles of the uterus, or if there is extension to the lower uterine segment, then it gives us a better visualization. Otherwise, it has got no advantage. And Uterus should be closed in 2 layers, 2 layers by using continuous absorbable suture as compared to the single layer. There was a Caesar trial in which it has been found that single versus 2 layer closure is not associated with any uh, difference in the short term complications. But it has been seen that single layer closure was 4 times more associated with the scar dehiscence. So, uterus should be closed in 2 layers by using continuous absorbable sutures. Acha. After closing the uterine muscles by in 2 layers, next comes the peritoneum. Whether peritoneum should be repaired or not, it has been seen and studies have been done that if we do not suture the peritoneum, visceral peritoneum or parietal peritoneum, it will reduces the operating time and the need for the post-operative analgesia, and it also improves the maternal satisfaction. So, but there are no follow-up studies addressing the long-term complications such as adhesion formation or bowel obstruction. So we cannot say anything. So in order to reduce the operating time, reduce need for analgesia or maternal satisfaction, closure versus non-closure, short term जो है वो short term complications are same and long term follow up studies are missing. So we cannot give any recommendation for this. It is up to the discretion of the surgeon whether to close the peritoneum or not. There are no difference in the short-term outcomes, and long-term uh, observational studies on the outcomes are missing or not done. Okay, after closing the peritoneum, we will approximate the muscles and we'll take a simple suture to approximate the rectus muscle. This will not give any strength to the abdominal wall, but just to restore the anatomy, we will approximate, and after that, we will close the rectus with the Vicryl 1 continuous sutures. And after closing of the rectus sheath, we'll close the subcutaneous fat if the fat layer is more than 2 centimeter. If it is more than 2 centimeter, then interrupted stitches should be taken, absorbable sutures, as this decreases the incidence of the wound infections. Okay, now comes the skin closure. There are different ways of closing the skin, whether it can be done by subcuticular absorbable or non-absorbable sutures. Non-absorbable suture is a Vicryl 1 which is used, and non-absorbable is Prolene which requires removal. Or this closed subcuticular sutures are done either continuous or interrupted. Sutures can be applied, or staples can be used. And in patient in which there is an increased risk of hematoma or infection, an interrupted suture has advantage that removal of one or two suture allow the drainage if required. Staples are quicker to insert and associated with more pain. So subcuticular absorbable suture have benefit of less pain, good cosmetic effect, and no need of removal. So what is the conclusion? Subcuticular continuous sutures have good cosmetic, less pain, and they do not need to be removed. So uterus should be closed in 2 layers by continuous sutures. Visceral peritoneum closure versus non-closure has no effect. We should close the rectus with the Vicryl 1 continuous sutures. It is an absorbable suture, and after that subcuticular fat we close it by interrupted suture if the thickness of the subcutaneous fat is more than 2 centimeters, and the interrupted suture of more than 2 centimeters is associated with reduced risk of wound infection, and skin by either continuous or interrupted. Continuous by absorbable or non-absorbable. Absorbable is Vicryl, non-absorbable is Prolene. Interrupted sutures are taken with the non-absorbable suture, and staples can be applied. And in those cases in which there is a risk of infection and hematoma formation, interrupted sutures are recommended because it will help in the drainage of the infection, pus or blood, if you simply take out a few sutures from that site. But continuous suture, subcutaneous absorbable suture has advantage of being less painful, good cosmetic effect, and there is no need of removal. Okay, what is the post-operative management? Post-operative management is that a patient should be cared, a woman should be cared with one-to-one basis and by the trained individual in an appropriate environment until they regain their airway control and they are cardiovascularly stable and they are able to communicate. Until then, they should be cared by one-to-one basis. And skin to skin contact and early breastfeeding should be facilitated as soon as possible. And maternal observations like heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, pulse oximetry should be performed initially on a frequent basis, but once patient is awake and stable, there is no need to done on the frequent basis. Um, and a woman should be encouraged to eat and drink as soon as she feels hungry or thirsty. Catheter is usually removed after 12 to 24 hours in cases of the regional anesthesia. Early mobilization should be encouraged, and in all cases, discussion regarding the reason for cesarean section, implication for the future pregnancy should be take place prior to the discharge and including recommendation regarding mode of birth in the future. So before discharge, patient should be counseled about the reason for having cesarean section, what are the implications, and what should be the mode of delivery in the future pregnancy. All these things should be discussed with the patient prior to the discharge. Okay. Now, what are the complications of cesarean section? We divide complication into the intraoperative and post-operative complications, and the complications are 5 times higher than that of the vaginal delivery. And we divide complications, intraoperative complications, and uh, intraoperative complication and post-operative complication. And intraoperative complication are related to anesthesia. There may be anesthesia complications. There may be a hemorrhage, organ damage, or there is difficulty. Like there is technical difficulty in gaining access to the uterus, usually due to previous surgery, previous adhesions, difficulty in delivering the baby, difficulty in delivering placenta. There is extension of the uterine tears into the vagina or broad ligament, which lead to hemorrhage. There may be a damage to the bowel, bladder, and ureter. There are chances of having fetal lacerations, fetal damage, which is about 1 to 2%. And cesarean hysterectomy is one of the complication, which is peripartum hysterectomy, and it is done in those cases, and it should be anticipated. Like if we are doing a cesarean section on a patient having placenta previa or morbidly adherent placenta, so counseling regarding the cesarean hysterectomy should be done. Another indication for cesarean hysterectomy is uterine atony or postpartum hemorrhage, and if patient is not responding to any of the conservative measures, like if patient go into the uterine atony, we usually go for a balloon tamponade, uterine artery ligation, ovarian vessel ligation, internal islet ligation, or before ligation or with ligation we can go for a modified V-link sutures, like we apply a compression suture, we go for arterial ligation. But if all these measures fail and uterus is unable to contract and patient is continuously bleeding, in that case we go for cesarean hysterectomy, or cesarean hysterectomy in cases of placenta accreta is done. So this is one of the intraoperative complication which is due to excessive hemorrhage in order to save the life of the mother. Okay. While the post-operative complications are the chance of infection is 5 to 20 fold more, and there are chances of bone infection, hematoma formation, atelectasis. Atelectasis, when patient is remain bedridden or immobilized, so there are chances of having atelectasis. So patient should be mobilized early and chest physio should be done as early as possible. Again, deep vein thrombosis This is also one of the complication of the prolonged immobilization. So initially the thromboprophylaxis or scoring of the patient should be done, and in order to avoid deep vein thrombosis, patient should be asked to it should be encouraged orally, asked to take fluids and mobilized, and post operatively we can in order to reduce the risk of thromboembolism, we can give her low molecular weight heparin or anti-embolic stockings can be used to avoid this complication. Again, urinary tract infection, as our patient is not taking orally properly, decrease intake of the fluids, and because of the use of the catheter, there are chances of having UTI. And endometritis is one of the postoperative complication. This is more common in those patients who have uh, uh, prolonged rupture of the membranes, or they have a trial of dye by and they have used a patient with trial of labor by some dye or at a private clinic, or there is a history of repeated pelvic examinations or rupture of the membranes, and the psychological or physical morbidity like post delivery, postpartum blues and depression as a part of physiological changes, psychological changes can be there. So post-operative, there are certain complications. Apart from this, there is one category of a cesarean section which is known as a perimortem cesarean section. What is a perimortem cesarean section? This is a cesarean section which is done in the patient who is pregnant and is having acute maternal collapse. And if patient is unable to revive within 4 minutes of resuscitation, and if we do CPR and patient is not revived, and patient is pregnant and pregnancy is more than 20 weeks, in that case perimortem cesarean section is done, and it is done simply in order to deliver. Why we are doing it? Because if baby is more than 20 week pregnancy can cause compression over the return towards. If we deliver that baby, so it will improve the circulation, and there are chances that patient may revive. The perimortem cesarean section, if 4 minute resuscitation failed, we go for a perimortem in order to save the life of the mother, in which we give vertical incision on the skin, and we go for a classical incision on the uterus, and in which we just need a scalpel. We do not need any sterilization or technique. It can be done in the labor room, and once patient resuscitated, then the remaining the process or procedure of the labor cesarean section is done in an OT under proper sterilized environment, and that's all. Thank you.
मैम चैट ऑन करना है?
Yes, on करना है. Are there any questions? Yes. Alishma has raised hand, but can you type your message? Are there any questions? You can type your message here for any question. There are no questions? सब कुछ समझ आ गया? Okay, just a brief summary of cesarean section as we have time. So cesarean section is a modern obstetric procedure, and it is used to reduce the maternal mortality and morbidity. and there is a wide variation. And the maximum UK, the incidence of cesarean section is about 25 to 30%. Like the right cesarean section is not known, but WHO recommend that it should not be more than 15%. And there are certain classification or categories of the cesarean section which you should know. Category 1, when there is an immediate threat to the life of the fetus of the mother, and examples are antepartum hemorrhage or abruption placenta, cord prolapse, rupture of the uterus, when there is a fetal distress with pH of 7.2, and prolonged fetal bradycardia. Category 2 is no immediate threat to the life, but it should be expedited. And the examples are abnormal CTG trace with borderline pH, non-progressive labor, or poor maternal pain control. And category 3 is an early delivery. There is no fetal maternal compromise, in which a planned cesarean section with rupture membrane, growth restricted fetus with abnormal Doppler studies but normal fetal heart rate. Category 4 is the cesarean section, which has replaced the term of elective cesarean section, and it should be done beyond delayed should be delayed up to 39 weeks in order to minimize the respiratory problems in the neonate. Okay, what are the questions? Okay, the difference between the Phalanstein and the Joel cone incision, that both are the suprapubic incisions, but the Joel cone, Phalanstein incision is low transverse, which is given about 2 centimeter or 2 finger above the pubic symphysis. It's a low transverse curved incision, okay, and in which we use a sharp dissection. While Joel cone incision is slightly higher up, and it's a straight transverse incision, and in which we make a small nick in the center of the rectus sheath and we extend it laterally with the fingers. While in case of the Phalanstein incision, we extend the incision with the scissor. We use sharp dissection. Phalanstein is a semilunar, while Joel cone is a transverse. Phalanstein is a sharp dissection incision, while Joel cones we do a blunt dissection. The advantage of having a blunt dissection is that reduce amount of the bleeding, reduce operating time, and less post-operative fever. And perimortem cesarean section is a cesarean section which is done to save the life of a mother. Pregnant patient is in acute maternal collapse and resuscitation has failed. After 4 minutes of resuscitation and if patient is not revived, after 4 minutes of CPR, patient revived nahi ho raha, and the pregnancy is more than 20 weeks. So we do a perimortem cesarean section so that we deliver the baby in order to improve the maternal circulation, and it is done we can do it in a labor room. We do not need to be done in the in the theater, in which we just need a scalpel, in which we usually do not go for cleaning and draping. We just give midline incision in the skin and classical incision in the uterus and deliver the baby and see how the patient is responding. And if patient improved or revived, then remaining procedure is done in OT under sterilization. It is just to save the life of the mother if CPR or resuscitation failed, like 4 minutes has passed and patient is not responding. Placenta previa, we do cesarean section in placenta previa. In major degree of placenta previa, because the cervix in the category 3 and 4, the cervix is occupied by the placenta, and it is not possible to deliver that patient by vaginally or normal delivery. And in cases of morbidly adherent placenta, like when placenta previa along with previous scar, we give classical incision to the uterus, because we want to avoid cutting the placenta, because when we cut the placenta there will be increased chance of bleeding. So in placenta previa we go for a cesarean section, and if it is a morbidly adherent placenta, we give classical incision to the uterus in order to avoid cutting the uterus. Exteriorization means when we take uterus out, like we want to stitch uterus. During your posting, if you have seen that we stitch the uterus while it is inside the peritoneal cavity. Exteriorization is that when we slightly pull out the uterus from the skin incision. This is for better visualization. And if there are extension of the tears, like extension of the uterine angles, or if there is extension of the incision into the lower uterine section, lower uterine segment in cases of the difficult delivery, so in that case it will help because it provides us a better visualization, but it is associated with increased pain post-operatively. So exteriorization is not recommended, but if we are unable to see the extension of the tears for visualization, yes, we can do it. It is up to jaw crown or phalansteal is the discretion of the surgeon. Usually we go for a phalansteal incision. It is the discretion. Both are good. Both have certain advantages. While jaw crown is associated with less operating time, less bleeding, and less post-operative pain, and both are same. But the difference is of sharp dissection or blunt dissection. It is the discretion of the surgeon. And classical and phalansteal is different. Phalansteal is a skin incision, while classical incision is given on the uterus. There are three incisions which are given on the skin, like phalansteal, jewel cone, and subumbilical vertical incision. And in uterus, we give incision, transverse incision into the lower segment, or a classical incision, which is a vertical incision into the upper uterine segment. The classical or phalansteal, these are two different things. Classical is on the uterus and phalansteal is on the skin. These are two different. Okay, any questions? Thanks. What is this TG incision? When how to take the baby out once we have given? Okay. Okay. After giving incision, we will insert our right hand from that incision into the uterine cavity, and we try to reach below the head of the fetus. And if our hand is below the head, we just slightly fix the fetal head and try to lift it out. And this is the normal scenario which usually occurs. But there are two other conditions, like if the head is deeply impacted. If head is deeply impacted, in that case we are not able to reach below the head of the fetus. The surgeon is not able to pass his hand below the head, because if we pass our head, we will disengage the head, and after disengaging we will lift it out of the uterine incision. So in cases of the deeply impacted head, there are two ways of delivering the baby. Is the disimpaction of the vaginal head from the vagina. We ask our assistant to disimpact vaginally. The assistant will try to flex and try to push the fetal head upward. And other way is to deliver the baby. If a head is so much deeply impacted, or it is not possible to deliver the head first, then we deliver the baby by breech extraction, in which we first try to grasp the foot of the baby and deliver the baby breech. Like first we deliver the foot, leg, trunk, shoulders, and last the head is delivered. Okay, are there any questions? Hope queries are solved. Anything else, or you want me to summarize this presentation, which I was doing? Okay, let's finish with the summary. There is okay. Okay, now the indication we have discussed in detail, but just going through it briefly. Previous scar, malpresentation or a breach, non-progressive labor, fetal distress, multiple pregnancy, twin pregnancy with first leading twin is not cephalic, or high order multiple placenta previa or antepartum abruptio placenta, fetal disease, maternal disease, cesarean section on a maternal request, patient of HIV with viral load of more than 400 copies per mil, primary genital herpes in the third trimester. It is not the recurrent, it is the primary infection. In order to avoid the vertical transmission, now the procedure informed consent is important.